I have a secret for you, Pascal. I have a secret. What you and I are discussing here so openly, and it looks like Russian propaganda, is very much extended in the diplomatic community because we are professionals. We are pros. We have nothing to do with politics. We are at the service of politics. We all know very well what happened in Istanbul. We all know that they were preparing a coup. The Americans were preparing a coup for about 10 years. We know who received the money. We know who was behind the coup. We know what Yanukovych wanted to do. We know everything absolutely. And among us, free from constraints, we speak like I speak with you. All is false, Pascal. All is false.
Hello everybody, this is Pascal from Neutrality Studies and today I'm talking to Ambassador José Zorrilla. Ambassador Zorrilla joined the Spanish diplomatic service in 1973, becoming Consul General to Milano, Shanghai and Moscow, and finally Spain's Ambassador to Georgia in 2011. Ambassador Zorrilla is also a passionate filmmaker and scriptwriter, as well as a keen analyst of international relations. Hence, today we want to talk about Spain, the future of Europe, and diplomacy in the multipolar world. Ambassador Zorrilla, welcome.
Hello, Pascal. Good morning. Thank you very much for calling me to your program.
Well, thank you very much for saying yes to me writing you an email, and I would like to know more things about Spain. But first, I really wonder about what you think of the current situation, where we finally, after 3 years, are seeing the return of diplomacy to a really horrible situation, and I mean especially Ukraine, the war in Eastern Europe. For the longest time there has been an absolute refusal from the West, and especially from the US, from the Biden administration, to even pick up the phone and have a call with their Russian counterparts. And now all of this is happening. Are we seeing the return of diplomacy to world politics?
Well, to world politics, I don't know, but definitely to the Ukraine scenarios, no doubt. And it is a welcome initiative. It's a very good idea, and it should have never been abandoned. It's difficult to believe. Remember, in the days of yore, when the Soviet Union existed, and it was an existential threat to the West, it was indeed an existential threat. The ambassador Chernomyrdin, which represented his country for a very long time in Washington, had a place reserved for parking at the State Department. Today, not even a bank account. You know, the embassy of Russia in Spain, for instance, does not have a bank account out of sanctions. This is unheard of. And I'm delighted to see that finally the two warring factions have decided to meet in Saudi Arabia, I think. But anyway, they are going to discuss, talk, which is very good, instead of, just killing each other on the battlefield by proxy or non-proxy. Yeah, it's very good.
Much of the discussion that came out of Washington and Brussels for the past 3 years has been that, oh no, NATO is not at war with Russia. We are just supporting the victim of aggression, and therefore then saying that they have no say, they cannot push any kind of negotiations. Do you agree that that was the height of dishonesty?
Pascal, this is a blatant lie. This is a lie. In 1990 or 1991, as you want, when the Soviet Union collapsed, the United States had a choice. One was the choice offered by Germany. Germany presented itself with a map. You can find the map drawn in the book by Mary Sarot, Not 1 Inch. It's there, drawn. And the security of Eurasia went from Brittany in France to Kyrgyzstan in the Far East. So it was comprehensive, inclusive. And the alternative was the American one with NATO. The Americans rejected flatly the German notion because they thought that it was, in inverted commas, toothless. So it had to be, yes, toothless. There has to be a wedge. There had to be a wedge. And the wedge was NATO. It had to be wedge. And all this came from the old doctrine of English imperialism, Mackinder. Never the union between Germany and Russia. That's it. Second, following the advice of the Rand Corporation and Wolfowitz, they, instead of creating a collective security, they tried to enter the hole that the Soviet Union left and thus conquer finally the world, to which they were destined by the manifest destiny, which basis, is the basis of their policy since the beginning of the 19th century. Well, the result is for everybody to see, unending wars, crimes, blood, capital, and 3 trillion a year of deficit. In short, an unsustainable policy. And the end, of course, has come with Donald Trump. Now, the idea that we have a war, but we don't have a war, is hypocritical. For years, from 1990 till 2014, the coup of Maidan, the United States funded and financed all possible NGOs and institutions, with preparing the coup that finally came in 2014 with the Maidan. It's false. It's utterly false that Yanukovych was a Russian bogeyman. It was not. Sure thing, you have seen more than once a piano concert. There is left hand and there is right hand. What was the purpose, the strategic purpose of Yanukovych? He knew that the East was pro-Russian and the West was not pro-Russian. The idea was to make the two of them sound harmonically. Now, that was a no for the United States. They wanted a united Ukraine under the sway of Kiev, of course, definitely welded to the United States of America. Now, for anybody knowing, even superficially, the history of Ukraine, it was impossible that the eastern part of the country would obey the orders from an elite that considers their forefathers and the founders of the homeland, the Nazis, Stepan Bandera, Roman Shukevich, Konovalets, etc., and Stietsko. Impossible. Even Kissinger said it. You have the article, if you are interested in this, you're a professional. Henry Kissinger in the Washington Post, 5 March 2014, published an article and said, this will lead to territorial split and civil war. Now, the United States wanted the war to go on because this will bleed Russia, which I don't know by what reason they consider to be a danger, other than, it's a very big country. It has 12 different time zones. Apart from that, it's not a danger to anybody, Not that I know. Then there was, this is not mentioned at all, but it is true. And the sources of all I'm going to say right now are Victoria Nuland, Alexei Arestovich, which was Zelensky's right hand, and David Arakamian, another of the big shots of Ukraine, of the new Ukraine. And they said and repeated that a peace deal was signed with initials between Russia and Ukraine in Istanbul. And what happened? Well, it happened that they went to Washington, and Washington said, how come you sign a peace? What's this? And the others said, they're very innocent. The poor Ukrainians were very innocent. And they said, well, Putin doesn't want any territory, He has no territorial ambitions. The only thing he wants is that we don't join NATO. And then Biden said, no, but this is the object of everything. This is the goal. No NATO, no peace. Wage war, and we will give you all the necessary, and you will end up winning. Not only did they do that, they went to Georgia, and they tried to convince them to open a second front. Georgia wisely said no. Now, to say that they were attacked without a cause by the Russians is, quite frankly, incomprehensible. But the most incomprehensible of all is that everybody in the West has joined in this kind of lie. So everybody agrees that Ukraine was a normal country, didn't do anything bad, nothing happened, and then a vampire of the steppes, a sinister Dracula, invaded Ukraine. Was it not true? A journalist asked the director of security, Sullivan, would we accept the militarization of our frontiers? And Sullivan said, of course not. We would intervene decisively. So what we do not accept, Russia has to accept. Why? Obviously, as I said before, because we are different. We have been chosen by God to extend republicanism and democracy the world over. So we are different. Even furthermore, the island of Solomon lies 9,300 kilometers away from the coast of the United States. The island of Solomon said, we would like to open a Chinese base. And the Department of State, 2 days afterwards, said, never. Considering all these arguments, to say that Putin invaded for no reason is simply unbelievable. The extraordinary thing is that finally, Trump, the new administration, is beginning to say exactly, Pascal, what I'm telling you. So you are listening to Trump.
Yeah. No, we really, I mean, we had a battle of narratives, right? And people like us who were saying this is the height of irresponsibility, stop this provocation and stop the incredible escalation of this conflict. We were decried as Putin puppets, and we were decried as pro-Russian and pro-Kremlin when all we wanted is stop the fighting and come to some sort of agreement. What I don't understand, I mean, I do understand why the Biden administration did that. I do understand why people like Victoria Nuland and Antony Blinken, in their mindset, it is neoconservative mindset of we have to control the world and nothing less but total domination is enough. I understand how this makes sense for them. What I do not comprehend is the Europeans. How could they go along? And you were an active diplomat in the years before. I mean, what was the consensus or what was the view of the diplomatic corps of the Europeans? Because I know they meet, right? You meet among each other. What was the view on Ukraine and on Russia? Was this a slow progression toward this stupid narrative, or was it all of a sudden and everybody was silent?
You ask a very difficult question to ask, and if you were older, I will reply in Latin, because there is a very good beginning in Latin on all this. I don't know. The very same Germany that offered the map of Eurasia, a comprehensive security, the very same Germany that said, no, Ukraine and Georgia should not be part of NATO in 2008, they created this incredible, I don't know how to call it, hoax that is Minsk to fool Russia, which is incredible. I mean, they created Minsk with the idea of giving time to Ukraine to arm. Now, the philosophy of the European Union is peace. They were giving time to Ukraine to arm and go to war. Now, you ask me a question that I simply can't answer. I don't know why. Why this sudden reversal of fortune? Why this sudden turncoat? I don't understand. I don't know. But I have to say that my peers in Europe, and above all, the guys at the top, haven't the slightest idea of strategy. They know nothing. They are a bunch of ignoramuses. I insist, total ignorance. And now they have put the fate of the United Europe, so to speak, in inverted commas, in the hands of people who hate Russia, say the Baltic countries and Poland. Now, let's go to strategy 101. What is the principle of a strategy? Interest, to defend the interest of your country. Now, what is the main purpose of the Baltics and Poland? To hate Russia. Now, if you base your strategy upon interests, when your interests are fulfilled, carried out, the battle finishes, comes to an end. But if you hate, there is no way to satisfy your hate. It's like bullying. I don't know if you know the illness that befalls some people with an unending appetite, bulimia. Bulimia. Now, when you eat a lot, when you eat too much, you are not trying to satisfy your appetite. You are trying to satisfy your anxiety. And anxiety cannot be fulfilled or satisfied by food. Here is the same. Baltics and Poland will never, ever be satisfied with our policy towards Russia because they hate Russia. That's as simple as that. They hate. Therefore, they are not strategic countries. They are not conceived as a strategic entity, and therefore they are able to drive the European Union to any serious or good rational conclusion. That's the problem. No.
I was wondering for a while that, this term of Russophobia has been around for a while also, that the Europeans are Russophobic and therefore they do these policies. But this is, to me, partially wrong because phobia implies fear. And there seems to be no fear. If there was fear of Russia, then you wouldn't drive such self-defeating policies that potentially get you blown up by the thing you fear, right? But so do you think that this ideology of not fear of Russia but hate of Russia is kind of became it must have been there latently all the time, but now it became there was a moment when this could be lived out again by the entirety of Western Europe. Is this kind of a is this a hidden complex of the Europeans toward the Russians? Because for the last 250 years, the Europeans have been trying to conquer Russia and they all failed every single time. What is it that creates this? I mean, Napoleon, the Germany won, Hitler, all the time. And the Russians are saying like, guys, we don't feel secure next to you. And then the Europeans, I mean, our media makes us believe that Russia and Putin is the delusional one. I mean, the last 200 years, I don't understand how the Europeans can be so blind toward our own history toward the Russians.
Well, it has taken me a lot of time to reach these conclusions, which I offer you tentatively. But Russia is very big. If you want to rule the world, you have to conquer Russia. This is Napoleon philosophy. And this is the United States philosophy. We want to rule the world. How can we rule the world if the center of Eurasia is not conquered? It's impossible. We have to conquer the world, period. That's it. It's clear. And it is, there is something that is rarely mentioned because Brits are convinced that they are the best in the world. It is true. It is true that they have their own critics, eminent Victorians, and etc. But at the end of the day, they think that, they were always right. Now, let me tell you something that is rarely mentioned. After Napoleon comes one of the most, I would say, sinister and sad moments in the history of the West. Russia, a Christian country, was about to conquer Turkey, and then Istanbul, no, Constantinople, would have been again Christian. England prevented that with the Crimean War. If today we cannot pray in Santa Sofia, if today the bells do not ring in this city, if it is not the Constantinople of yore, is due to the Crimean War. And the Brits are very proud of this, because if you go to London, you will see all the statues of the heroes, in inverted commas, of Crimea in the mall, up there in the mall. The Opium War, again, that, is different, but the portraits of the guys who did this genocide, commit this genocide, are inside Parliament. The paintings, the portraits of the guys who did this. But let's go back to Russia. If England had adopted a Western thought, normal Western thought, when they saw that Russia was about to conquer Turkey, yes, the Roman, in fact, not Turkey, the Ottoman Empire, if they would have reacted to this in a Christian normal way, they would have allowed the Russians to conquer Constantinople and turn it back into a Christian city. And do not tell me that they didn't know it, because after the First World War, when they were enemies of Turkey, they outsourced the conquest of Constantinople in Greece, and Greece failed. So they knew from day one what they were doing. No question. This is the first step. This is the first, say, chapter. Napoleon, England, and then again the Second World War. There is something rarely mentioned, but Truman said, between inverted commas, let's say, 20 after the war, 20 million dead is not enough. Truman, Harry Truman, 20 million dead is not enough to enfeeble Russia. It's unbelievable, but true. And when the Soviet Union collapsed, Wolfowitz said, keep an eye especially on Russia, because Russia could, of course, become powerful again. And we have the testimony, I don't know if you know it, of Jeffrey Sachs. Jeffrey Sachs helped Poland, and the White House phoned him and told him, Jeff, great job. Congratulations. Congrats. Hi. Okay. Now, Jeffrey Sachs goes to Moscow and does something very similar. And then receives a telephone call. Jeff, what the hell are you doing? It's a plan. It's a very similar plan to Poland. And they say, yes, but Poland is a friend. Russia is not.
Yeah. He tells this story many times over.
Don't forget it.
They
were always in the crosshairs, always in the crosshairs, because they have 12 different time zones. If you do not control these 12 time zones, you cannot control the world. That's a fact. They're an object of desire.
Do you blame the European approach mainly on the political leadership, or was let me say, from your experience with your peers, with your European peers at the time in the 90s, 2000s, early 2010s, the diplomats are kind of professional diplomats, not the appointees like the US does it, but professional diplomats who enter from like first secretary, third secretary, and then work their way up, right? They have a good connection with each other, and they're like kind of an epistemic community, right? Across countries. Was this vision of Russia shared, Or was back in the days, was this much more nuanced? And was Russia part of the European diplomatic corps? Or was there always a division?
I have a secret for you.
Hmm.
Pascal. I have a secret. What you and I are discussing here so openly, and it looks like Russian propaganda, is very much extended in the diplomatic community because we are professionals. We are pros. We have nothing to do with politics. We are at the service of politics. We all know very well what happened in Istanbul. We all know that they were preparing a coup. The Americans were preparing a coup for about 10 years. We know who received the money. We know who was behind the coup. We know what Yanukovych wanted to do. We know everything absolutely. And among us, free from constraints, we speak like I speak with you. All is false, Pascal. All is
I,
false.
I notice that a lot because diplomats are very, very good observers. They are often then not able to say these things publicly, but they observe it and they know it. But then because you are the servants of the politicians, right? So you have to bend your will according to politicians. So, but is this known actually among the diplomats?
Well, as I tell you, I became slightly, only a bit famous in Spain because, I said, if I were an ambassador on active service, I wouldn't be able to say what I say now. That's the truth. The same happens with the military.
Yes.
Don't think for a moment that the military are a bunch of idiots. No, 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 no. They're very clever and they know very well what is going on. In fact, it's personal story. I run, I have a very good relationship with the military establishment. And one day we were having lunch at the staff college. So the conversation, went the usual way. Everybody was very polite. Nothing was mentioned. Nothing was of interest was mentioned. After the lunch, one of the attendees, one of the guests, came with me, and we strolled a bit in the streets of Madrid, and just like that, he saw me. He said to me frontally, "Ambassador, everybody says that Russia is our enemy. Do we have to be part of this world at the price of such a blatant lie? Go and figure." So we all know, we all know. But if you say what I'm saying now, and you are about to become general, you may forget to become general. If you are a 2-star general and you want to be a 3-star general, forget about saying this. You can't. And with the ambassadors, it's the same. Russia is bad, period. And even if they perfectly well know that this is not the case, absolutely. So these are two layers, two different layers, truth and not truth. This is something that, quite frankly, upsets me a lot because we are living in a bubble of lie, and it's something that is very difficult for me to accept. Leaving aside the fact that people once insulted me and told me that I received money from Putin in a daily publication of Spain of import, not digital, of something, paper.
I mean, this is just blatant smears, just smearing and trash talking people who do not agree. It's also part of the opinion controlling mechanism, right? Of trying to bully others into submission. It's a very, very mean approach, but the that it works. The thing is, what we need to recognize is it works. It works as a tool in order to make sure that you have the majority of the population behind you in order to go along and do and implement policies that are so stupid that they might get the European continent pulverized. I mean, if this thing had gone another way, and nuclear warheads had started to fly, we Europeans would be dead, maybe together with the Russians, but we would be dead. And we were willing to do that. Just in the same way as there was the NATO has found a way to fight a proxy war with a foreign army against their strategic enemy. So our job is it to explain how that is possible and figure out mechanisms to prevent it in the future because these people are psychopaths. Do you have anything that you can add to how to prevent this or what it was that went so horribly wrong? If the intelligentsia actually understood what was happening, but the intelligentsia is not the ones guiding the ship.
That's it. Well, you have very close to you in Wellington, New Zealand, in the east, a professor, Van Jackson, and he claims that what Biden was doing was a kind of military Keynesianism. So as you know, Keynes said that the way to keep the kettle boiling was to spend a lot of public money in public works. Biden said not in public works, in wars and in the military and in a military complex. Very good idea. Now, how anybody buys all this? Very simple. Money. USAID, all the media in the world receive money from them. CNN, New York Times, Washington Post, everybody, they flood the world with money. And everybody in the end believes that, well, Ukraine is a normal country, innocent, and it was attacked by this monster that happens to be Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin. Now, they have conveniently forgotten that, the guys at the helm in Ukraine are people who consider themselves heirs to Bandera, Sukievich, Stietsko. They killed 1.5 million Jews. There is a book on this, a bestseller. It's called Bloodlands. It was written by Timothy Snyder. It's very well known by everybody. How can they name in a stadium with the name of Roman Sukievich, a guy who is in all the encyclopedias of the Holocaust, the guy who destroyed the ghetto of Ternopil? How come? How is it possible? How is it possible that they hoist the banners of the Brutum Boden, red and black, the very same flags that were waving in the air of Lviv when they killed the people that they killed in a horrible pogrom? You can watch it. Anybody can watch it. It's in YouTube. This pogrom. The flies at the city council. These very same flies were flying there. It's obscene, Pascal. It's obscene. I can't accept it.
No, it's very hard to even deal with it on an intellectual level. But can I ask you about your own country and about Spain? Because the countries that were a lot in the media about the Ukraine war were France, were Britain, were Germany, even Poland and the Baltics. But I haven't heard anything about Spain. So what was Spain's approach? How did it just tag along, or was there any kind of meaningful
Well,
opposition?
we follow suit. The Americans say that it's our enemy. We apply the rules. That's it, period. Now, what they think at home when they have breakfast with their wives, that's a different story. That's a different story.
And
But
you were
definitely, we follow suit like everybody else. The United States have decided that Putin is bad, so everybody says Putin is bad.
and you
Now
you
the question is the opposite. Now the incredible thing, is that there's a principle in international law, the succession of the states. So what Trump is doing now has to take into account the fact that before him, another administration did something else, but he is heir to these initiatives and strategies. But this is not the case. Trump comes and says, all right, well, not only I don't agree with this, but I consider Ukraine complicit in this horrible war, which is true, was triggered by my own country. But without your help, you, Ukraine, the war wouldn't have existed. Therefore, you are going to pay me for all the money that Biden gave you. I think this is the first time in history.
I don't know. I feel just so incredibly sorry for both, for Ukraine and for Russia. I mean, this was an unnecessary civil war, and Spain went through an unnecessary civil war, and it was horrible for Spain. It was terrible, and it caused a lot and a lot of hurt for decades, and it's going to be the same here. And all of this for a big chess game because some people think that this will be somehow beneficial for their careers. It's so hard to fathom.
It's clear that in the question of Ukraine, the war came because the United States wanted to enlarge NATO and they wanted Ukraine to be part of NATO. This is the origin of everything. Because Putin was very clear, I don't want territories. The only thing I want is that you do not join NATO, period. And then the United States said, you have to join NATO, go to war. Now, if you ask me, do you think joining NATO for a country like Ukraine should be cause for a criminal, cruel, brutal war? And now we know, thanks to Time is, the periodical, very famous periodical, founded by Henry Lutzer a long time ago. We know that Biden never believed that victory was possible.
It's even more of a crime. It's even just war for war's sake, and the conversion of a state that worked. I mean, a status that worked. Because when Ukraine, I mean, when the Soviet Union broke apart, Ukraine was put into a special category to deal with because the West understood that Ukraine is so special, right? So you need to have special arrangements in order to have places to exchange. I mean, diplomatically, and all of this was clear, and then it was turned around bit by bit.
Sorry?
Do you think that there will be trust again? How would you, if you were in charge of rebuilding trust between Europe and Russia, how would you go about it? Because by now I do think that the relationship is so deeply poisoned that how do we live together on this continent that we share?
Well, Pascal, the situation is as follows. Geography is not going to change. Therefore, we have to become again friends with Russia, period. Now, if everything was, triggered, organized, financed, funded by the United States, and they have found a way to speak to Russia with more reason and more ground, we, poor European countries, can go to Moscow to mend fences. It's not that difficult. You go there and start mending fences. Okay, we didn't mean it. I'm so sorry. We suppress visas for you to begin with, and very slowly, in a couple of years, we will be friends again. Things probably will never be the same in a long time, but say 10 years or something, but nothing lasts forever. Remember Napoleon, and then they become very good friends with France. They signed the famous alliance between France and Russia, Russian Empire. That was the cause of the first, well, it was not the cause, but anyway, one of the reasons of the Great War, So even if Napoleon had attacked Russia, so nothing is everlasting.
That is
In
true.
Facebook, after years of, Russia is not mentioned, lovely ladies begin to appear and say, do you know how to say in Russia, hello? Привет. And if you want to be more formal, is здравствуйте. Overnight. It's overnight. So that gives you an idea, it's inevitable. They are close to us. They have 12 time zones. We have to be friends. That's all. And now, how can the Russians receive Madame Callas? Madame Callas, which is our PESC, foreign policy woman, said, well, if Putin loses the war, it will be good because Russia will become, a lot of small countries, and it will be, better for everybody. Now, if you were the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Russia, would you receive this person?
No, no, this would just be unthinkable.
Unthinkable. How can a Minister of Foreign Affairs say this of your neighbor, a neighbor with 12 different time zones,
It's
defending the territorial split of these guys, through military means.
It is utter ignorance. It is utter ignorance. But I have one more question because you were in Tbilisi in 2011, and that was after the short war between Russia and Georgia, and it was right at a time when actually when what was his name? Saakashvili lost power, and then the Georgia Dream came into power, and you had this shift. And Georgia was kind of a early version, or could have been an early version of Ukraine with a much bigger war, right? But it calmed down, and the Georgian population kind of now again for the last 8 years they've been very aware, more than 8 years, sorry, it's now been 12 years. They've been very aware that you cannot make an enemy of Russia without suffering a lot, right? So for pragmatic reasons they decided to not vote into power again the very forces that would turn Georgia into another enemy of Russia, right? And they still have their problems. They still want their regions back. They still don't have diplomatic representations in each other's countries, but they are not willing to make Russia an enemy. This is the return of realism, I would say, to a population. Do you think that the rest of Europe can also return again to a more sane approach and a sane way of thinking about their neighbors and not split everything into good versus evil, which it never was to begin with?
Absolutely. Look at Romania. They have seen what happens to a country when they decide to go full steam ahead against Russia. Destruction follows. Ukraine is destroyed for the next 100 years. So Romania definitely takes a stock. And Georgia has very recently said, we were offered to open a second front. We said, no, we are right. Ukraine is destroyed. We were right. What has to be criticized and blamed is the European Union, because if Georgia does not condemn Russia and sanction Russia, will not become part of the European Union, in which 83% of the Georgians would like to be. We are acting as a watchdog. I am absolutely against it, because I know the Georgians. All of them want to be part of the European Union. And the European Union has said, all right, condemn Russia, sanction Russia. And they cannot do it. They cannot do it. When Saakashvili, was brought to power by coup, call it the way it is, a coup, the rate of interest in Georgia jumped to 25%. You tell me, what kind of economy can you, work with a rate of interest of 25%? Well, NGOs funded by US aid, or NGOs funded by the National Endowment for Democracy. Apart from that, nothing to do. And the countries, of course, isolated because the interface with the world was Russia. If Russia cuts the links, then they're lost. They can't. I mean, a minimum of realism, makes it impossible to be 100% pro-American. They have to keep a balance. After all, the principle of good neighborhood is critical in international relations. Good neighborhood, totally ignored by the United States, because all the coups of the United States have taken place precisely in the borders of Russia. This
Yes,
is a blasphemy in terms of international relations. It's a blasphemy. You can't do that.
yes, and there were several other attempts in Belarus, in Kazakhstan that failed or that got
In Armenia,
yeah.
in in Yugoslavia at the beginning, in Kyrgyzstan. Kyrgyzstan, it has produced a terrible, a constant fight, ethnic fight, a constant ethnic clashes between Kyrgyz and Uzbeks. It's definitely unacceptable. Unacceptable. Traveling.
Do you think
I
that
hope that finally Trump puts an end to all this.
yeah. That would be very, very welcome. But the Europeans or the people in power in Europe, the the, the leadership in several countries, not all of them, but in several of them, plus the European Union. I mean, the majority of them, not all, but the majority of people in the European Union belong to a very special group of thinking of again of an epistemic community, and they have been tying their luck and their entire political career so closely to the United States that now that the United States is kind of going away, and not only going away but backstabbing them by doing something with who they believed was the enemy, that what do you think will this do to these people who are still in power? They still have the possibility to wreck our continent. What do you think will they do? Because until the next generation comes into power, we will at least need to spend another 15, 20 years. Because these people, unfortunately, unless they are massively swept away by popular elections, they're going to stick around and they're going to try to get revenge. What do you think that will happen?
Well, only it's impossible. I mean, look, this one has to speak to Poland gently, because after all, they disappear 4 times. They suffer a lot. But one has to explain gently, with sensitivity to our Polish friends, look, you are spending a lot of money to fund your hatred to Russia. But be careful, because in order to be accepted into the high table of the high school, you have to be sponsored by one of the seniors. No senior, no matter how many millions you spend, you are nothing. And your champion, which was the United States, has disappeared. So all the money that you have spent in weapons is equal to nothing. Without the United States, nothing. What to say of the United Kingdom? Well, Starmer makes me think of a butler between jobs, because the United States have disappeared. It's a butler, but the Duke is over. So it serves nobody. As to France, well, he's a dying president. He's about to leave. Now, how about the others? You have precisely pinpoint the question. What are we going to do with this incredible, ignoramuses? Well, quite frankly, I don't know. But, for them, the sense of shame has to be terrible. They have spent the best part of, say, 10 years saying, oh, how wonderful, the cloth that covers the emperor, gold, silver, gems, precious stones. And then the satrap says, why do you say that my clothes are wonderful? Can't you see that I'm naked? This is the situation. Yeah. What can they do now? They are totally and completely um, out of favor and out of reality. Now, what can happen now is for everybody to ponder. It's impossible to know. I do not have good vibes. I don't trust very much all these guys. So I'm convinced that they won't do what is good for the world, for the common good, but they will try to do what is good for their posterity.
Well, the this is going to be a riddle for me for still quite a while how we managed to get us into this mess because the 1990s were so hopeful, weren't they? They were hopeful from all sides,
Yes,
including from
yes.
the Russians.
But, you know, there was, I had a very rigid Catholic education, upbringing, you know, in the days of Franco. So I tend to see things as a temptation, you know.
Mm.
So the Soviet Union collapses, and Germany, with the wings of an angel, comes and says, look, this is paradise. All we have to do is to accept the bad guys into the realm. Let's do it. But then there is a Mephisto, you know, whispering in the ear of the United States. Go for the whole hog. The well will be yours. You deserve it. God chose you. You are the chosen people. Wreck these damn mujiks. Tell them how to live in freedom, in democracy, and conquer the world. And then the United States fell into the temptation and started, you know, a road to destruction, which has cost an unending number of victims, money, capital, blood, whatever.
Maybe this is the way to look at it. Maybe at least then it makes sense with a story of temptation and failure because we poor mortals we just can't resist. If the cookie looks too delicious, we just can't resist.
Very well, very well, very well. Temptation and failure, and failure. That's it. Failure.
But
The fallen.
the fallen angel. The fallen angel from across the pond. Ambassador Zorilla, thank you very much for these explanations. Is there a place where people who listen to this can go and read from you? Do you publish somewhere on a regular basis?
I have my own. I have my own channel in YouTube, but it is in Spanish, you know, and it's not subtitled for the moment. Right now, I'm going to publish a very, very interesting interview to someone who is conservative and who was advisor to the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Yanukovych.
Hmm.
And that will, yeah, and that will be subtitled.
Please do send it to me, and I will also distribute it via the comments to my audience so they can find it.
Of course, I will do it. You have to tell me what is your email. Give me an email,
Yeah,
a
yeah.
good
I'll
email.
send you. I'll send you my mail in a moment, so we can stay in touch there. Ambassador Zorilla, thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks to you, Pascal. It was very nice to be able to express my thoughts with such an absolute freedom. Thank you very much.
Thank you.